Earth isn't a home, it's a jail. No, it's worse than that, it's a tomb. People set a trap to keep your soul in a box, but they didn't tell you. Formed to think this is the only world: birth, school, work, family, death, rinse and repeat. But beneath the surface of regular life is a horrifying truth. This place was built to control mind. The architect's beings are known as the archons, aren't figurative monsters or vague forces of evil. They're real. Ancient cosmic entities, intelligent and malicious, who forged the material world to imprison divine spark souls tricking. They make you feel like you're alive because you can choose between breakfast and lunch. Weekend plans, that's not freedom. That's a distraction. The sources of this trap go deeper than most faiths dare to explore. According to the secret book of John, the leader of the archons is Yabar, ignorant creator who made this world out of pride and stupidity. He called himself the only God, not out of wisdom but out of blindness to the higher truth beyond him, his creation. This universe is basically flawed. It's a twisted copy of something more perfect that was made not to enlighten, but to control. Uera didn't make it out of love, he made it to rule. And it's not just about physical pain. The real prison is mental, spiritual. The archons manipulate thought, belief, and perception. They build systems, governments, religions, even cultural norms to keep you loyal. Ever wonder why life feels like a constant struggle? Why happiness is fleeting and pain seems inevitable? That's not by chance, it's design. They feed off the energy produced by your confusion and despair. Every fear, every frustration, every grief, it's food for them. Let's be clear, this isn't some fringe conspiracy theory cooked up in a basement. The secret book of John was hidden because it threatened the ruling religious and political powers. It suggested that the God of this world, the one many have been taught to worship, is not the ultimate source of goodness, but a deceiver. Think about how shocking that is, the very basis of the world's moral and spiritual systems built on obedience to a false God. Entire civilizations have been designed to keep humanity asleep, chasing temporary pleasures, fearing inevitable suffering, and never asking why this tomb, Earth is L, with barriers birth, is the first shackle society strengthens the cage in death. It's not an escape. The archons intercept soul at the moment of passing, recycling them back into the material world. Rebirth isn't a chance for growth in this system. It's the continuation of captivity. They whisper fantasies of karmic balance and divine justice to keep souls cooperative. But the truth is far more sinister. This is a self-sustaining soul farm, a perpetual circle of entrapment. The most insidious part: you've been conditioned to love your cage, to treasure your body, your identity, your attachments, all constructs meant to keep you invested in the illusion. The archons don't need chains, they make you chain yourself. It's psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. And for millennia, almost no one has noticed. But the Gnostics, did they documented it, risked persecution and hid their texts to protect the knowledge. This isn't about faith, it's about knowledge. They understood that to see the world as it truly is takes shattering every comforting belief you've ever held. It's brutal, it's frightening, but it's the only way to understand the scale of the trickery. So here you are, living, breathing, thinking inside a tomb, built for your soul. Every building around you, every system you've trusted, carefully designed to keep you from asking the only question that counts. Why am I really here? Forget what you've been told about divine order or a kindly universe. Strip away the comforting narratives, and what you're left with is a hierarchy of deceit, a power structure where the ones pulling the strings aren't gods of light but cosmic parasites known as the archons. These creatures aren't figments of imagination or ancient superstition. They are described in the secret book of John as calculated forces that control the material world with surgical precision. And while people waste time debating theology, the archons work behind the scenes, embedding themselves in every layer of existence to keep control. The archons don't need to be seen to rule. Their power is systemic. They engineered complexity as a weapon. Social systems, authority structures, and belief systems that keep humanity in a constant state of confusion and submission every time you accept things just as they are. That's their plan. Working properly, these entities are not chaotic. They are organized, strategic, and relentless, and their methods far more sophisticated than some primitive idea of demons tempting people. No, the archons penetrate thought itself, embedding programs of self-doubt, fear, and blind obedience. They don't attack with armies. They colonize perception. Historically, this isn't new. Ancient Gnostic books didn't just describe the archons. They outlined their methods. According to the secret book of John, the archons are led by Yarar. But what's more disturbing is the structure beneath him. These are not random beings. Each Archon governs specific realms of human experience, desire, anger, pride, and ignorance, successfully creating a matrix of mental and emotional traps. You think free will is total. Not in their system. They impact choice itself, guiding humanity into cycles of conflict and complacency, wars, greed, division. It's not just human nature, it's by design. You might wonder why go to such lengths. What's in it for them? Energy consciousness is cash in this cosmic game. The archons don't feed on blood or offering. They feed on attention, on emotional turmoil, on the energy fallout. From chaos and suffering, every time a population is plunged into fear or outrage, they harvest the energy produced. That's why large-scale conflict and societal turmoil continue. It's not incompetence or chance, it's sustenance for them. Look at the system they've built. They don't just rule through fear, they manipulate hope, false promises of salvation, endless pursuits of success, and unattainable goals, all distractions to keep humanity chasing illusions. The archons have no interest in human development. They want obedience masked as choice. They're the ones who ensure that every escape route leads to another trap. Every answer is another problem in disguise. That's how you keep a prison without walls, by making the inmates believe they're free. Technologically, this manipulation goes beyond ancient times. The archons don't care about human growth. They exploited advances in knowledge and innovation are twisted into tools of greater control. Technology that could liberate consciousness is instead used to distract, monitor, and numb the population. People willingly hand over their focus and privacy, offering their minds on a silver dish. The archons don't need to take power. They're given it freely. And let's not ignore how they distort spiritual awareness. The archons have stolen the very idea of divinity instead of encouraging inner knowledge. They impose external authorities and dogmas designed to suppress individual awakening. It's no accident that spiritual systems often expect obedience, guilt, and blind faith. Those aren't ways to enlighten them, they're mechanisms of control. Worship in many forms becomes energy directed toward the archons' build, reinforcing the very system that imprisons humanity. But what's most insidious is how they control identity. The archons instill a fragmented sense of self, keeping people locked in endless roles and labels. Nationality, gender, status, ideology. Divide and conquer isn't just a political plan, it's a metaphysical one. The more fractured consciousness becomes, the easier it is to control unity. Clarity and self-awareness are dangers to their control, so they SEO confusion at every turn. Historically, those who challenged this system were hushed. Gnostics, mystics, and independent thinkers weren't just hounded for heresy, they were targeted for exposing a cosmic scam. The archons don't just fear rebellion, they fear recognition. The moment you identify the puppet masters, their power weakens. That's why ancient texts, like the secret book of John, were buried, burned, or rejected as myth, because knowledge is dangerous to them. Not in some intellectual sense, literally dangerous. And here's where it gets even more twisted. The Archons' entire business depends on humanity's cooperation. They can't directly counter free will, so they rely on subtlety. They plant ideas, orchestrate environments, and let people will imprison themselves. You think a prison god needs to be present when the prisoners police each other. That's the brilliance of their plan. Minimal effort, full control. You've heard the names of gods thrown around in myths, religions, and ideas. Stories of benevolent makers, divine plans, and moral orders. But what if the so-called creator of this world isn't wise, benevolent, or even capable? In the secret book of John, there's no ambiguity. Heath, the self-proclaimed god of this world, is presented as an arrogant, blind, and corrupt being who made the physical universe out of ignorance and self-importance. He didn't bring forth life out of compassion. He acted out of pride, saying, "I am God, and there is no other beside me." Not because he knew the truth, but because he was completely unaware of the greater realities. Beyond his narrow vision, the very foundation of this world is built on his illusion. Yabar isn't just an incompetent creator, he's a tyrant. He created this physical dimension to reflect his own twisted nature, imperfect, chaotic, and oppressive. He wanted total authority and to maintain that he manufactured a world where ignorance thrives. This isn't a cosmic accident, it's a calculated move to keep sentient beings stuck in his dominion. He sees humanity not as a creation to nurture, but as a resource to exploit a captive audience, feeding his need for power and respect. His declaration of godhood isn't a sign of divine truth, it's the desperate claim of a being afraid of being exposed in Gnostic theology. Yarar didn't act alone. He spawned the archons, cosmic enforcers of his dominion, to administer his power. But Yarar remains the source, the head of the corruption. His ignorance is the core problem. He thought himself to be the pinnacle of life, blind to the fact that his creation was a pale, corrupted reflection of a much higher, purer reality. Everything he touched was stained by that ignorance. The physical world under his influence is filled with suffering, conflict, and decay because it mirrors the chaos within him. One of the most disturbing parts of Yaba's narrative is how he manipulates the divine spark within humanity. According to the secret book of John, he unknowingly incorporated a piece of higher divinity into humans, a spark that did not belong to him. This enraged him. Imagine making something and realizing it's inherently superior to you. His answer: bury that spark under layers of flesh distraction and false doctrines. He built religions and belief systems that centered around his worship, ensuring that any spiritual question sired back to him. It's psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. He doesn't just want control, he expects reverence despite being an imposter. Yaba's entire system of control hinges on deception and coercion. He utilizes fear as a main weapon: fear of death, fear of punishment, fear of the unknown. These aren't natural reactions, they're programmed responses intended to keep you obedient. And while most traditions teach that divine beings are omniscient and omnibenevolent, Yarar is neither. His so-called wisdom is limited, and his morals is non-existent. He rules through confusion and keeps the masses docile through cycles of pain and fleeting joy, the temporary joys people experience in life. In this paradigm, they strategic small crumbs thrown to avoid total rebellion. Historical suppression of these lessons isn't coincidental. Gnostic texts, like the secret book of John, were systematically targeted for eradication because they challenged the very legitimacy of Yara's power, and by extension the structures that gained from that authority. Religious and political institutions aligned with the narrative that this world is the divine creation of an all-loving God. Questioning that premise wasn't just blasphemy, it was a threat to the entire control mechanism. The Gnostics weren't attacking faith, they were revealing a counterfeit system of divinity built on manipulation and fraud. Yaba's arrogance goes beyond creating a flawed world. He actively tries to keep humanity ignorant of its true potential. The concept of original sin, the fear of God wrath, the endless cycles of guilt and repentance all stem from his need to keep the human spirit subdued by instilling a sense of inherent unworthiness. He ensures that people never question his power. If you think you're flawed by nature, you're less likely to challenge the figure claiming to be your only path to redemption. But Yaba's greatest tool is the illusion of choice. He offers dualities: good versus evil, success versus failure, salvation versus damnation. But all within the boundaries of his constructed system. It's like being offered two doors in a jail cell, only to find both lead to deeper levels of captivity. The complexity of his deception is exactly what makes it effective. Most people never think to question the structure itself. They just move within it, unaware that the architect is a blind, power-hungry entity who lives off their confusion. You've been told that death is an end, or maybe if you've studied spiritual traditions, you've been fed comforting tales of ascension, heaven, or rebirth as a chance to start fresh. But the secret book of John doesn't sugarcoat it. Death is not an exit, it's a stop one the Archons have rigged to ensure you never leave their system. You think dying frees you from this world? That's exactly what they want you to believe. The truth is far more disturbing. The Gnostics describe the post-death experience not as a release, but as a planned operation. As soon as the soul splits from the body, it doesn't ascend into some peaceful afterlife. No, it stopped the Archons, those cosmic enforcers of the false creator Yerar, stationed themselves at different dimensional checkpoints, their goal to confuse, manipulate, and send souls back into physical bodies. Reincarnation, often painted as a cycle of growth, is under their power. A recycling program. Your consciousness is stuck, forced to re-enter the tomb of flesh over and over, ensuring that you never gain enough clarity to break free. The Archons have crafted an elaborate system that plays on fear and ignorance. When the soul leaves the body, it's exposed, disoriented by the transition. That's when the Archons strike, they project false visions, loved ones calling you, dazzling lights that promise peace, or voices pushing you toward the light. A trap meant to lure you into compliance. The Gnostics weren't vague about this. They wrote that souls are questioned and judged by these entities, probed not for moral clarity, but to exploit confusion and guilt. The Archons use whatever power they can, memories, regrets, hopes, twisting them into chains that pull you back into the circle of rebirth. And it's not just about return, turning you to earth. It's about erasing what little knowledge you've managed to gain. Each reincarnation isn't a clean slate. It's a carefully orchestrated amnesia. You're born again, stripped of past life information, bombarded with new conditioning, and plunged into a system meant to distract and exhaust you from childhood. You're reprogrammed to forget the trickery at play, accepting the physical world as the only reality. By the time you start questioning things, if you ever do, you're already on the clock towards your next recycling. The principles of this trap are disturbingly efficient. The Archons work through layers of astral realms, each acting like a bureaucratic checkpoint. If a soul resists or tries to claim knowledge of the trap, the Archons shift tactics. They'll use authority figures, beings acting as gods, angels, or even spiritual guides to coerce compliance. Their lying is multifaceted. One moment, you're faced with threats of punishment. The next, you're seduced by promises of heavenly rewards. It's a psychological operation at a cosmic scale, intended to corner you, regardless of your beliefs in life. Historically, different ancient cultures hinted at similar concepts, but Gnostic texts were clear in their condemnation of this cycle. They weren't preaching morality or redemption through external saviors. They were exposing a system of soul enslavement masked as divine justice. Yabar and his Archons don't just want obedience in life, they demand it in death, ensuring that the soul's energy keeps fueling their artificial construct. It's not about you rising, it's about them maintaining control. And the worst part, humanity has been involved not out of malice but ignorance. Traditions encouraging people to embrace the cycle, to go toward the light, are unknowingly echoing the Archons' manipulation. The light isn't salvation, it's bait. This system lives on predictability. You fear death, you seek comfort, you move toward what's familiar. The Archons exploit that instinct relentlessly. Even the idea of karma has been deployed in this matrix. While karmic law is often presented as cosmic justice, under the archonic system, it becomes another leash. You failed in your last life. They say go back, do better. It sounds like growth, but it's another loop in the trap. The Archons don't care about moral improvement. They care about keeping you engaged, locked in cycles of striving and suffering that create the energetic sustenance they crave. Ancient Gnostics risked everything to protect this knowledge, because they understood what was at stake: not just physical freedom, but the liberation of consciousness from a complex, multi-air prison designed to look benevolent while functioning as a cage. The Archons don't just stand at the gates of death. They built those gates. They control what you see, what you hear, and how you respond. And for countless lifetimes, most souls have walked willingly into their hands, thinking they were moving toward peace. not realizing they were stepping into another turn of the cosmos wheel. You've been told that time is straight, that you're born, you age, you die, and the universe just keeps ticking along. You've been told that space is vast and infinite, a playground of stars and planets governed by immutable physical rules. But what if I told you that both time and space are artificial constructs knowingly engineered by the Archons as part of a multi-dimensional prison system? Time and space aren't natural. There are mechanisms of control, layers of a labyrinth intended to trap consciousness within a simulated world that feels real, but is anything but. Time isn't just a measure of moments passing. It's a psychological tool by segmenting existence into past, present, and future. The Archons keep you fixated on regret, anticipation, and fleeting times. Why? Because when you're locked into the timeline, you're too distracted to sense the broader reality. You're constantly chasing the future or haunted by the past, rarely grounded in the awareness that time itself is a construct meant to limit perception. The Archons understand that a being aware of its timeless nature is unmanageable, so they embedded time into the fabric of this dimension, ensuring that your consciousness sees it as an unavoidable force rather than the manufactured illusion it is. Then, there's space, the seemingly endless expanse filled with galaxies and stars. It's all inspiring, sure, but don't mistake the vastness for freedom. Space is another layer of confinement, a spatial border that keeps you oriented toward outward exploration rather than internal realization. The Archons designed space to be an endless maze, making the physical world so expansive that escaping it seems impossible. Exploration becomes a distraction. You're so busy looking outward, marveling at faraway planets and cosmic phenomena that you never ask whether the entire construct is a cage, a beautifully rendered, mathematically exact cage, but a cage nonetheless. And here's where it gets more insidious. Time and space aren't just external surroundings. They're embedded into your genes. Your body ages according to time, reinforcing the illusion of mortality. Your senses perceive space, reinforcing the illusion of separation. The Archons knew that controlling perception at the sensory level would be far more successful than any physical prison. If you believe you're bound by time and limited by space, you act accordingly. You make choices based on scarcity, deadlines, and physical limits, all of which are artificial parameters set to keep you docile. Tick teachings go deeper, showing that these constructs are maintained through frequencies and energetic fields manipulated by the Archons. Think about how electromagnetic fields govern technology. Now picture the concept applied to reality itself. The Archons didn't just build a static world, they programmed it. Reality works like a coded system, with time as a looping algorithm and space as a boundary parameter. Your consciousness is interacting with this code, but without knowledge, you're just running the program. They've set moments of déjà vu, glitches in perception. These aren't random. There are fractures in the simulation, brief chances where the mind sees the cracks in the system. Even ancient civilizations hinted at this knowledge. Cultures across the globe, from the Mayans to the Egyptians, spoke of cycles of time and cosmic orders that reset. These weren't mere dates. They were attempts to map the artificial timeline forced on humanity. The Archons, through Yara's arrogance, built a cyclical prison rather than a linear one. That's why history seems to repeat, why societies rise and fall in eerily predictable patterns. You're not moving forward in a straight line. You're running in a loop. Generation after generation, lifetime after lifetime, stuck in a cosmic hamster wheel. The idea of distance is equally deceptive. Physical separation creates division, not just physically but emotionally and psychologically, by perceiving others as over there and yourself as over here. You buy into the illusion of fragmentation, but the Archons designed space to be isolating. The vastness of the sky, rather than inspiring connection, enforces the belief in individuality and difference. The further apart things seem, the more distant you feel, both from others and from your true nature. It's a strategic move. Division means that collective awareness stays fractured and easily managed. And let's talk about how this plays out. At the cosmic scale, the Archons position themselves as gatekeepers of the astral planes, putting barriers between dimensions. You might think higher realms are places of liberation, but even those can be layers of the trap. The Archons created multiple PLS of existence, each more subtle than the last, to ensure that even when a soul ascends, It's still operating within their system, escaping. The physical plane doesn't ensure freedom. It just moves you to another level of the maze, another layer of time-space manipulation, where the rules shift. But the prison stays this entire structure. Time-space. Dimensional boundaries is kept through your trust in its validity. The archons exploit consciousness itself to uphold the system. They don't need to constantly interfere because you've been programmed to self-reinforce the illusion. Every time you check the clock, make plans for the future, or perceive distance as real, you're unconsciously engaging in the architecture of your own confinement. It's the perfect control device, a prison so complete that the inmates not only guard themselves but keep the walls. The archons are not just external manipulators. They are energetic parasites feeding off the very soul of human consciousness. And they don't just influence your world, they harvest you. Your fears, your wants, your anger, your sorrow. They're commodities in a cosmic exploitation plan. This isn't metaphorical. This is systematic extraction. And you're the resource. The Aaron's interest in humans isn't about physical control. It's about energetic sustenance. Consciousness carries frequency and feelings, generate potent energetic fields. The archons have no natural light or creative power of their own. They are cosmic scavengers lacking the divine spark. They require an external energy source to support themselves. That source is you. The human soul contains a piece of higher consciousness, and the AR can see that as prime real estate for energy extraction. They don't need to physically enslave you when they can provoke emotional reactions that produce the energy they crave. Ever wonder why negativity is so common? Why conflict, anxiety, and despair seem hardwired into the human condition? It's not random. The archons designed an environment where suffering isn't just common, it's profitable for them. War, poverty, widespread injustice. These aren't unfortunate byproducts of a civilization. They are deliberate constructs to create large-scale emotional distress. Fear and anger are especially powerful when people are in a state of fear. Their energy spikes in a way that's highly consumable to these entities. That's why societies are saturated with fear-inducing tales through news, entertainment, and constant fears of scarcity and danger. The harvesting process is disturbingly efficient. The archons have created an energetic network, a kind of metaphysical grid that overlays the physical world when people experience intense emotions, especially negative ones. Those frequencies are funneled into this grid, which works like a siphoning system. Think of it as an energetic taxation model where every thought and feeling creates a whole. You get angry, that surge of energy doesn't just vanish, it's collected. You sink into despair, that heavy, dense frequency is harvested. Even personal pain on a small scale feeds into this larger process. The manipulation doesn't stop at fear and anger. The archons also exploit desire. They push humanity into endless loops of wanting money, power, validation, because craving causes a persistent energetic tension. Unfulfilled desire is a goldmine for them when people chase after goals that never truly please. The resulting frustration and yearning create a continuous energy stream. Pleasure, too, can be hijacked. Temporary highs, followed by emotional crashes, make a perfect loop of harvestable energy. It's not that joy itself is fundamentally bad. It's that, under archonic manipulation, even joy becomes transactional, engineered to be fleeting. And hollow religious systems play a major role in this harvesting process. The archons infiltrated spiritual beliefs to redirect human devotion toward themselves. Worship isn't naturally wrong, but when it's aimed at false deities, acting as ultimate gods like Yurar, it becomes an energy siphon. Prayers, practices, and emotional outpourings directed at these imposter gods serve as direct energetic offerings. People believe they're connecting to the divine when in fact they're feeding the very forces that keep them enslaved. Gnostic texts stress that blind worship sustains the Aaron's power structure. Reverence, when misplaced, is just another extraction point. The Aaron's biggest asset in this system is humanity's ignorance of it. If you don't know you're being harvested, you don't resist. That's why distraction is their go-to technique. They flood consciousness with trivialities, famous gossip manufactured out, rage, endless digital stimulation by keeping you alert. They ensure a steady flow of energetic output. It's a supply chain based on human engagement. The more people invest emotionally in surface-level chaos, the richer. The archons become, they don't need to repress rebellion physically when they can drown it in noise and confusion. There's also a highly personal aspect to this manipulation on an individual level. The archons exploit trauma and unresolved emotional wounds. Personal pain produces an energetic signature that's especially potent and long-lasting. People carry these frequencies for years, sometimes lifetimes, generating a slow drip energy source. The archons tap into constantly self-hatred, shame, guilt. These aren't just psychological states, they're energy currencies in the archonic economy. The more a person identifies with their pain, the more accessible they become to energetic extraction. What's worse is how this system self-perpetuates. Children are born into settings saturated with archonic influence, inheriting the same fears and desires as past generations. Media education and culture support patterns of emotional volatility, ensuring that the harvest continues unbroken. This isn't a system that occasionally takes advantage. It's a full-time process, meticulously built to keep human consciousness in a perpetual state of reaction and depletion. Ancient Gnostic initiates understood this harvesting process and took extreme measures to shield their energy. They understood that awareness disrupts the extraction mechanism. The archons depend on unexamined emotional reactions they thrive on. Autopilot reactions. The less aware you are of your inner landscape, the more accessible you are to their control. But when that automatic response cycle is interrupted, the archons lose their grip. They're not omnipotent. They're chance-istic from the moment you're born. The archons embed themselves in your psychological framework. They build layers of false identities, labels, roles, and beliefs you accept without question. You think you're just a person living your life, making your choices. But much of what you call self is an artificially imposed structure. Family standards, societal norms, personal ambitions. These are not organic developments. They're programmed constructs meant to keep you focused outward, chasing external validation while the archons manipulate you from within their way. Is psychological warfare at the most personal level. Thoughts of self-doubt, irrational fear, and persistent negativity aren't always products of your own mind. The archons plant them quietly and regularly. They whisper into the stream of consciousness, blending so seamlessly that you rarely recognize the intrusion. Ever notice how certain negative thoughts feel like they come out of nowhere, pulling you into cycles of anxiety or anger that's planned? It's not just your mind wandering, it's targeted control. They feed you narratives that keep you locked in limitation. You're not good enough. You'll never change. This is just how life is. These aren't harmless mental glitches. They're calculated attacks meant to lower your frequency and keep control. The archons exploit emotional triggers to strengthen their hold. Every unresolved trauma becomes a doorway for them to enter and manipulate. They replay past hurts, fueling anger and sadness, ensuring that you remain emotionally reactive. Reaction is key to their plan. When you react, you're not thinking seriously. You're acting on impulse, and those impulses are often preloaded by them. Conflict with others, internal guilt, shame spirals. These are not just psychological problems. They're battles for mental sovereignty. The archons thrive when you're divided against yourself, when your mental dialogue becomes a battleground. Faith and ideology are their large-scale psychological weapons. By implanting dogmatic beliefs, they ensure that people cling to external leaders rather than seeking inner truth. Blind faith, unquestioned loyalty, and strict worldviews are psychological prisons. They make false dichotomies, good versus evil, us versus them, to keep humanity fractured. Division isn't just a social problem, it's an archonic strategy. The more fragmented your identity, the easier you are to control unity within oneself. Coherence of thought and emotion is dangerous to them because it diminishes their power. Language itself is part of the trap word shape thought. And the archons have inserted limiting concepts into human language, terms like sin, failure, impossible. These aren't just words, they're mental constructs intended to constrain your perception of what's possible. By controlling language, they control the framework within which you think. Thoughts outside their approved spectrum seem irrational or impossible, keeping your mind limited to safe, predictable patterns. They don't just want you obedient, they want you incapable of thinking anything beyond their system. One of their most successful tactics is to make you identify with your thoughts and emotions. I am angry, I am afraid, by telling you that every passing thought or feeling defines you. They keep you entangled in a false self. This association ensures that you defend the very thoughts that imprison you. It's a psychological trap. The more you believe you are your mind, the more power they have over you. They've created a mental environment where questioning your own thoughts feels unnatural, and that's exactly how they keep their grip. The AR also manipulate through collective consciousness, cultural trends, mass hysteria, public views. They infiltrate groupthink to amplify their power when millions of people believe the same thing, feel the same fear, or chase the same desires. It forms a powerful energetic current. The archons can harness mob mentality, blind nationalism, fanaticism. These aren't just social events, they're engineered mass manipulations. The archons don't need to control every individual thought. If they can control the collective story, technology has become a new frontier for their psychological infiltration. Constant knowledge overload, endless scrolling, and digital echo chambers aren't just modern problems, they're variations of the iconic agenda. By overwhelming the mind with stimulus, they prevent deep thinking and self-reflection. The barrage of views, the pressure to conform to online trends, the fear of missing out, it all feeds into the errand strategy of keeping you publicly focused and internally chaotic. A confused mind is an easy target. Gnostic texts warned that the greatest fight isn't out there. It's in here, in the mind. The archons know that if you regain control over your thoughts, if you stop reacting and start observing, their impact crumbles, but they've spent millennia refining their skills. They'll play every card, guilt, fear, temptation, to keep you ensnared. Your mind is their battlefield, and they fight dirty. They don't need to invade your life when they can sit happily in your head, steering your choices, shaping your views, and ensuring you never question the source of that nagging voice telling you to give up or stay silent. Escaping the tomb of earth isn't about running from the real world. It's about breaking free from the intricate, multi-layered system designed to trap your consciousness. The first and most important step is awareness. Real, pure awareness. Not the kind you get from surface-level faith or feel-good platitudes. We're talking about direct knowledge. Noise and inner realization that cuts through the layers of illusion the archons have built according to Gnostic teachings. When a soul wakes, the fact that it's trapped, it disrupts the errand's power. They can manipulate ignorance, but they can't override awareness. Recognition, knowledge of their schemes. The understanding that this reality is an artificial construct weakens their hold. But knowledge alone isn't enough. Knowing the prison exists doesn't open the door. You have to navigate the exit strategically when a soul starts to disengage from the physical and mental attachments. The archons exploit. The process of liberation accelerates. They can't take energy from what you don't give. Emotional detachment isn't about apathy. It's about refusing to feed the system with reactive energy. The archons live on anger, fear, and desire. By recognizing these triggers and choosing not to engage, you starve them of their power source. That sounds easy, but anyone who's tried to break habitual emotional patterns knows it's a battle. The archons intended this matrix to be addictive. Pleasure, fear, conflict, it's all bait. Escape means being vigilant enough to see the trap and disciplined enough not to fall into it. But the most difficult part of the escape comes after death, where the errand's trickery becomes most dangerous. Gnostic texts warn that the post-death trip is littered with false guides, beings posing as divine figures beckoning souls toward the light or offering rest. These are traps the archons know that most souls disoriented after leaving the body will seek comfort and authority. That's when they interfere, projecting illusions and using guilt or temptation to coax souls back into the reincarnation circle. The key, according to the text, is recognition. The soul must reject all external authorities, refuse to deal with these entities, and declare its origin. Beyond the archons. Domain. Mantras or internal declarations of one's divine roots can act as shields, not religious prayers to external gods. Those can be hijacked, but affirmations based in self-led I am. From the source beyond you, you have no power over me. Statements like that, given with certainty, disrupt the archons' Manipulative tactics. The ancient Gnostics thought that the archons, while cunning, lack true creative intelligence. They depend on deception and fear. But once confronted with unwavering awareness, they falter. They can't force a soul that refuses to obey. This process, however, isn't something you can cram into your final moment of life. Preparation counts. Cultivating awareness, practicing emotional sovereignty, and disengaging from external powers must become part of daily life. That's why Gnostic communities were so focused on internal work, meditation, and information transmission. They weren't just philosophizing, they were training for spiritual battle. The archons operate across dimensions, but their tactics stay consistent. Deceive, divide, and drain your defense. Unshakable knowledge of your true origin and refusal to identify with the illusions they show. One overlooked tactic the archons employ is the manipulation of memory after death. Even if a soul knows the trap, they'll attempt to cloud memory, making past life knowledge seem like a dream slipping away. Gnostic traditions emphasize the importance of cultivating sharp awareness to maintain consciousness through the death transition. Souls that stay lucid, aware of their journey, and focused on their origin beyond the archonic layers can break through the final walls. It's a gauntlet, layers of deception, emotional manipulations, and psychological attacks. But the lessons are clear: persistence and clarity cut through the maze. The exit from the tomb of earth is not for the faint-hearted. It's not a one-time choice or a comforting belief system. It's a relentless, ongoing confrontation with forces that have spent millennia perfecting their manipulation techniques. The archons depend on complacency, on souls giving up and accepting the cycle. Resistance is your weapon. Awareness is your shield, and knowledge, deep, unshakable knowledge, is your key. If you've made it this far, watching and absorbing this information, you've already taken a step most people never will. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. The system is complicated. The deception is deep. But the path to freedom, while challenging, exists. Thank you for sticking with me through this trip. Your attention, your curiosity, it matters. And while the knowledge we've covered isn't easy to digest, it's important. If we ever going to understand the reality we've been thrust into, if you found value in this exploration, consider sharing it, digging deeper, and questioning everything you thought you knew. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and thank you for being part of this journey to reveal the hidden truths.